But another thing I wanted to ask you about, because you had mentioned it online, and also you seem to be very interested. You have a whole document here about it. Before we head into like the top 18, we got to bring up the clickbait thumbnail that we have and everything. Everyone likes to talk about the Japanese scene, not for the players and everything. We appreciate you telling us about that because I learned something today, especially about a lot of the top players. But the main thing a lot of people like to talk about when it comes to the Japanese scene are the weapons. A lot of the Japanese scene, from what people talk about, is that they use a lot more varied weapons, interesting comps. They pull out mid tiers, low tiers. Some of them are one trick ponies on those things. So I'm interested. What are some of the things from this like top cut that was definitely a big surprise, especially if you want to like point it out from your document?
Yeah, the absolute just biggest thing before like anything is spotted, because I'm finding it was a little bit weird, but Guga top 4.
Interesting. I feel like you have to love that weapon.
That knows about Guga for the past like 7 years knows that gun does not get results. It just doesn't. Yeah. It's not good enough. It's the most fake good gun. It's been like that since S2. That thing had wall baller when baller was good, and it literally did nothing.
But it's working here.
This I do want to say this comes with a caveat though. So the player that played Guga here was Tiramisu. And Tiramisu has been one of the best Splatoon players for a really long time. Just doesn't really do tournaments. Like they do a lot of solo queue, like a ton of solo queue, and show up with Guga there, but just doesn't really play tournaments. So this is like one of the very extremely rare times where Tiramisu came out, was a little hiding hole, and it's like, do a tournament. Why not? Some of these old legs working again. And top 4 immediately after that. So pretty showing like, hey, I can still walk up to these tournaments and win if I feel like it someday.
Yeah, that's interesting. And also, like you said, like there's like solo queue warriors. I think that's a big part of the X-Rank experience, especially like the way they emphasize it a lot more. They're solo queue warriors. There are solo queue warriors. I feel like the only one that really exists in the West I could think of off the top of my head is when everyone was making a big fuss about deservedly so Jordan or Solja or Jano Sushi getting that 5k XP. So I think that's pretty interesting. But honestly, I mean, he's playing a pretty generic weapon. He's playing Slosher. I mean, I think everyone and their mother is playing Slosher, and coincidentally, also S-Blast. I think that's a big pairing that people like to talk about. Japan, they've got the meta figured out in terms of S-Blast and Slosher. So, what would you say is like why they like that a lot? And when did that start happening? Like, when did people start saying like, you know what, we got to mix these two together?
Absolutely. So this is very fun because Melon and Dynamo actually had a 15-ish minute video where they talked about what is the state of the metagame, both in solo queue and competitive. I can go into solo queue like maybe later if you guys want, but for competitive, the idea of running guns that can just run forward and just nuke a guy off the map is very, very, very popular right now. And the main 2 weapons that Melon and Dynamo described for this were Mint and S-Blast. They actually say that Mint and S-Blast are about equal when it comes to that run forward and just nuke a guy ability. And I agree, because like maybe Mint can't just like insta hit scan tap a guy, but like Mint can jump in like 2,000 times and kill people like half the time off that. Like no other gun can just do that. However, Mint is not as popular as S-Blast because it requires more pain from its teammates. And that's a little weird on paper, right? Because it's like, wait, Mint requires paint from its teammates? Doesn't the Western scene see Mint as a gun that can paint and give paint to, a midline that's more paint hungry, like a Squeezer, for example, right? Here's the thing. Mint is slow. It's slow. Fast, but when you swing, it's like you turn into a mini paintbrush. And what happens if you're in a spot where you don't have that much paint is you swing like 2 times and you just die. And I know that from experience. I played this gun in so many tournaments, and I just like walk forward into a puddle with like a pool of like no ink. I think I can just kill a guy. I kill one, I instantly die. Or if it's good players, I walk in, I do 70, and I just die. Or 80 rather, just 80.
Yeah, it
But
does 80. I'm pretty sure.
yeah,
I don't know. I played it
it
last
is
night.
hell yeah.
I played Splatoon for the first time in forever last night. I had a friend who wanted to play, so I was like, "Oh, it does 80." That's all I
Yeah,
remember from last night.
Crazy. Breaks parries. It's on the unbreakable bond defense, but yeah, it requires a bit more coordination than S-Blast, but those two guns essentially define the metagame there. But that's low-key, it's low-key interesting in itself that specifically they bring up Mince for that instead of Stamper, because we talk about, oh my god, Stamper, if your Stamper guy's good enough, they just destroy the whole lobby. Zipcaster Stamper is the most thing in the game. It's not seen as that in Japan. Like, the gun is of course seen as good. It's still seen as like a borderline top tier gun, but Zip is honestly not as, it's just not as valued as it is in the West.
It's because we like Spider-Man. I think it's because we like Spider-Man more. I'm sorry, it's just cool. It's just too cool. It's like a rule of cool. And also I think it's I don't know who plays faster, the West or the East, but it could be that too. It's a very fast special.
That's one thing I was going to talk about at some point. Maybe keep an eye out on an upcoming YouTube video from Beat. But that's one thing I want to discuss is the general speed of the game. It's not like Japan plays faster than the West. It's not like the West plays faster than Japan. It's just about, at least from what I see, it's about how they think about the game in general.
Very, very great topic there, honestly. Really, really good topic. And I really like the idea about speed, because I recently honestly just followed into a trap when it came to the idea of speed. Because like when some people think of speed, they think of, oh, run forward, that guy, go, go,
Yeah.
go. But
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's not speed. That's rushing. And those are completely different things. Like that's when speed starts to turn into feeding, when you get too into that area. But there's actually an amazing post, like amazing post from Kyo that talked about the idea of speed and breaking it down into minimizing the time you're being useless, which does things like, yes, taking key areas of the map, but also preventing the opponent from standing in a certain spot. There is, let me just pull up this list here. It's such a good tweet. It's such a good tweet. But
do you have the tweet? We could put it.
The general
here
idea.
too.
Heck yeah.
Wait,
Oh yeah, another thing. But another thing that Kyo talks about when it comes to the idea of speed is finishing each other's damage. And I love specifically the Sendo Q Season 6. I haven't hard analyzed 7 just yet, but specifically the Season 6 finale of Gray's Pickup and FT Win. They do such an incredible job at taking space without dying. And anytime a guy would get hit, a teammate was there. Legitimately, I think there was like 5 fights max, where a fight happened and a guy did not get assist in some kind of way. Everyone was looking out for each other's damage and trying to finish it, which granted, they did have, Pen, Splash, midlines that do 70 damage and have burst bomb, except for Slosher. But still, that is a massive part of his speed, finishing each other's damage like that.
Yeah, and that's definitely a topic I'm going to end up touching upon, is just how people think about the game, and where I believe that Japan's style is similar to how Kyo has been expressing it in that type of way. It's not just about speed getting into like a more forward position, but it's about being smart about where you are going.
Yeah, so just kind of like being like like how fast can you like just accomplish whatever it is you're doing, not just like physically where can you get where you need to be, but just more so just like let's make sure we get on the objective fast, or paint the objective fast. Let's make sure we get rid of this person fast. Let's get into this position quickly. Let's make sure, if they're trying to do something and maybe they pop a special or something, make sure to neutralize the special quickly. It's more about just kind of moving towards like the right positions quickly, or doing what you want to get done quickly, not just zip casting from one side of the map to their spawn and trying to set up a spawn camp or something. Yeah, for sure. I feel like that is like an important difference to make between like feeding and just being efficient. I think the better word is being efficient, because you tell people speed, they're gonna think like you think, oh yeah, I just have to be fast. I'm a run speed and swim speed up. That's all I'm gonna do now. Yeah, it's about being efficient for sure.
Yeah, to us, speed is running a full QR with comeback and self. Why
are we making fun of my build right now? What do you mean?
You're 80 deaths, just only fight.
Yeah.
It is just it's the speed of your actions. It's how can I take an action and make the time it takes shorter, and then also shorten the time it takes to get to your next path, but also matching the speed of your teammates too. Obviously, if you're running at a faster pace than the rest of your teammates, you're going to end up, if you're going to get set up in the correct position where you should be set up for, defense, for example, if the rest of your team isn't matching that pace, you're just going to get left behind, or you're going to go too far ahead, you're going to be separated, and then it's just all going to crumble. So it's an intricate dance of being efficient, being fast, but also being coordinated.
Yeah, and to bring this back to the Area Cup, the event one more time, still keeping on the idea of meta, we were talking about S-Blast a bit, seeing how common that was within the event of its own. And I want to bring this over to the winning team. Correct me if I pronounce any of this wrong, but it is Kayami Tana with Kayami, Rentana, Kurokuro, and Rubitan. Where their comp was double bucket. So like it was pretty mirrored for the most part, but just having the general difference between a second bucket versus S-Blast in those final games. How does the S-Blast really affect the
It'll play, it's fine.
All right. How does that mindset of choosing between having an S-Blast player versus a second bucket player make inside of the Japanese mindset?
Yeah, I would say in this case it's actually very funny, because usually what happens in the case of having two bucket guys on the same pickup, for example, Kami is an amazing bucket, Rentana is an amazing bucket. Usually what will happen is one of the bucket guys just play a different gun, because like you don't want to stack on double strike, because double strike in itself is pretty slow. Like both your front lines, when they try to snowball something, they end up leaving themselves vulnerable. Like at that point, it would be better just run an S-Blast for having a gun that can just run it down and just nuke a guy, as well as still having like that same combo ability, having 3 for self-sufficiency. And even in Area Cup Crown, Melon's group with Himajin and also Dentana, that's 2 bucket players right there. However, Himajin ended up playing Pen for that group instead of bucket. So this time around, instead of having like 2 bucket guys and like one guy switches off bucket, there was like, let's just do it. Like what's the worst that can happen? And apparently the worst that could happen is winning Area Cup. So that's pretty good worst case scenario.
Really good worst case scenario in that situation, yeah. I think it's pretty interesting because, I mean, I feel like we haven't seen a lot of like doubling up. At least I haven't. I don't know. I mean, my base of knowledge is not playing, just Char's like meta preview videos. But yeah, like you didn't really see too much of it since like Crab Tank was like super popular during the beginning of S3.
We did have the triple splatter shot with pencil.
Oh yeah, that's right. That happened too. Yeah, yeah.
Oh no!
Oh my goodness.
Very creative comms here, guys. but yeah, it's like interesting to see it. It definitely seems like this like Splash is a mainstay with pencil. I did hear they also had a Headit somewhere in the top 4 as well. And I was pretty intrigued about that because honestly, I know a lot of people were talking about like at 9.3 and specifically like, oh, you know, the reign of pencil is going to be over, but we still mostly saw pencil. I mean, we saw, and specifically in Japan, you know, we saw had it in top 4. We didn't see any of that in the like Sendo Q finale. So I am like interested. They seem more willing to like experiment, kind of like what you're saying, especially with like stuff like double weapons, even on a weapon that isn't considered. I mean, it's considered top tier. I wouldn't say it's not considered top tier, but it's not considered like so overwhelmingly broken. You know what I mean?
There's definitely it's interesting because I would say, especially nowadays, if you look at the top 16 of an amazing Japanese bracket with a lot of great Japanese players and bracket with a lot of great Western players, the amount of experimentation is about the same. But I do there are some times where a really, really top end player will end up going something that's a little bit weird. Like, for example, King's Cup, which has happened a bit back. In the Clams Invitational of King's Cup. So think about this, right? You know, so many top Japanese players you have to fight. You're on stream. Hundreds of thousands of people are watching you or will watch you. It's game like 2 or 3 of the sets. And you, as Melon, decide to run Respawn Punisher against their comp as 52 gal.
They read Respawn Punisher.
One of the games in their Clams finale, the Clams Invitational is like, yeah, I'll run Respawn Punisher. I feel like it would give me optimal advantage as a frontline against these guys. Ender just no, it did not. They still won the game, but it did not do anything basically.
It's funny.
There is that willingness to try something just a little bit funny that I would say does still happen in the West. Does still happen in the West, but I feel like it's more extreme in Japan. Like one player, for example, Udabo, right? Who I do believe won, either placed first or second in the most recent Air Cup crown and has a lot of great results in general. Udabo is willing to go VDAPL for some maps and did go VDAPL in the top 4. Like that willingness for a pen guy to be like, I'll play a D tier gun because I feel like it gives me an advantage on this map is there, and I really like it.
Yeah, especially map specific counter picks and stuff, or not counter picks, but you know, like experimentation. I think that's pretty interesting as well. Yeah. So
in general,
go for it. Sorry,
I was gonna also say there are a couple of some differences between, you know, the Western scene and the Japanese scene in terms of weapons. Like looking at Area Cup, there's a lot of Splattershot Pro, just like V Pro, where that's kind of a weapon that hasn't really been touched in the Western scene in a long time. Where in Japan they look at that and go, I mean, it's a highly accurate gun, 3-hit kill. It has a long range sub that can do damage, and they're confident enough to have the accuracy to actually hit those line markers, and then it has the crab to boot just to round out the kit. And, you know, I feel like a lot of weapons in the West, we kind of look for like something that's more foolproof, but I think in the Japanese scene, they're willing to take more risks and kind of go for that high risk, high reward with some of their weapon picks and be able to just, you know, really play like they're going to win.
Yeah, I like. Oh yeah, you go.
No, I had nothing to say. I was just saying yeah.
Okay.
I just say yeah.
I do like the idea of foolproof, like the Western scene liking stuff that's foolproof. Because I mean, one, like let's just take a great example, right? Where Kara and the Melon Dynamon video, just like comparing those two. Recently, Kara made a VOD video talking about making good comps, and Kara brings up the idea of redundancy, running multiple other things so that if one guy dies, the other guys can fill for that. That idea of redundancy was not talked about at all in the Melon Dynamon video. They talked a lot more about specifically what is the environment and what is good there, and the ideas of having, you know, the rundown guy that can just nuke a guy, or something I didn't talk about earlier, how having a special, so specifically in solo queue, and like this kind of ties back to V Pro in a way, but having a special that's very good at killing, think crab, don't think Zipcaster, because Zipcaster, that doesn't technically give you more damage. It gives you like the little arm spinny thing, but it's not really
sometimes you kill
contributing to the I
yourself.
will nuke the lobby thing.
Yeah.
And also, definitely the difficulty factor to it. But those two things pretty much define the metagame, but also paint, which is part of why Pen's so popular, because like Pen doesn't have as much total paint output, but paint is very consistent still, and way farther, meaning it's way safer, meaning you can do it more, meaning it's more active. But they didn't bring up redundancy at all. Kara does. That little nuance can be part of why sometimes we see like, it doesn't happen as much nowadays, thank God, but like a year ago, people would be like, oh, just stack like 3 shooters.